Good evening, ghouls and goblins. Hey, I'd like to actually take a moment and opportunity to read a few interesting stories from my most favorite books or series of books of all time. They are collected by Alvin Schwartz, and they are the Scary Story Trilogy. The first book is entitled Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. The second one is entitled More Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. And the third one is entitled Scary Stories, More Tales to Chill Your Bones. I mean, this has been a tradition for me as long as I can remember. Around Halloweenish, every year when I was a little kid, I would go to the library, rent me one of these books, two of these books, three of these books. And that happened for years until I got my own copies. So, stories I'll be reading is from the actual first one. Yes, in the spirit of Halloween, yes, I am reading this story and dressed up like a fool. But please don't be surprised if I just do random stories. Room for one more. A man named Joseph Blackwell came to Philadelphia on a business trip. He stayed with friends in a big house they owned outside the city. That night, they had a good time visiting. But then Blackwell went to bed. He tossed and turned and couldn't sleep. Sometime during the night, he heard a car turn into the driveway. He went to the window to see who was arriving at such a late hour. In the moonlight, he saw a long black hearse filled with people. The driver of the hearse looked up at him. When Blackwell saw his queer, hideous face, he strutted. The driver called to him, "There's room for one more." Then he waited for a minute or two, and he drove off. In the morning, Blackwell told his friends what had happened. "You were dreaming," he said. "I must have been," he said. "It didn't seem like a dream." After breakfast, he went into Philadelphia. He spent the day high above the city in one of the new office buildings there. Late in the afternoon, he was waiting for an elevator to take him back down to the street level. When it arrived, it was very crowded. One of the passengers looked out and called to him. "There's room for one more," he said. It was the driver of the hearse. No thanks," said Blackwell. "I'll get the next one." The door closed and the elevator started down. There was shrieking and screaming, then the sound of a loud crash. The elevator had fallen to the bottom of the shaft, and everyone aboard was killed. Random story number 2. The white satin evening gown. A young man invited a young woman to a formal dance. She was very poor, and she could not afford to buy the evening gown she needed for such an occasion. "Maybe you can rent a dress," her mother said. So she went to a pawn shop not far away from where she lived. There she found a white satin evening gown in her size. She looked very lovely in it, and she was able to rent it for very little. When she arrived at the dance with her friend, she was so attractive that everybody wanted to meet her. She danced again and again and again and was having a wonderful time. But then she began to feel dizzy and faint. She asked her friend to take her home. "I think I've danced too much," she told him. When she got home, she laid down on her bed. The next morning, her mother found that her daughter had died. The doctor did not understand what had caused her death, so he had a coroner perform an autopsy. The coroner found that she had been poisoned by embalming fluid. It had stopped her blood from flowing. There was traces of the fluid on her dress. He decided that it had entered her skin while she was perspiring, as she was dancing. The pawnbroker said he bought the dress from an undertaker's helper. It had been used in a funeral for another young woman, and the helper had stolen it just before she was buried. Happy Hallows Eve.